You've been told that freedom is the goal, that if you can just cut all the strings, remove every limit, say no to everything that feels like a cage, then you'll finally feel alive. But if that were true, why do so many people feel more lost than ever, right at the moment when they're the most free? We think freedom means the ability to do whatever we want. No boss, no expectations, no commitments, just open roads and infinite options. And the more of that we have, the better. Or so we're told. But Viktor Frankl, a man who survived the absolute absence of freedom, warned us of something dark, that freedom by itself is a trap, that the endless pursuit of it, without meaning to guide it, doesn't make you free, it makes you hollow. It turns your life into a shapeless void disguised as possibility. Frankl wasn't some detached philosopher theorizing from a distance. He was a psychiatrist who lived through Auschwitz. He watched people break, and he watched people survive. And the difference wasn't strength or intelligence, it was meaning. His entire philosophy, logotherapy, was built on one unshakable truth. Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. In this video, we're going to unravel the lie of modern freedom. We'll explore why more choices don't lead to more fulfillment, why responsibility, not escape, is the key to meaning, and how Frankl's 3 timeless principles can transform the way you live, even when life feels empty. Let's begin. We all think we want freedom, but what we really want is freedom with direction. Most people don't realize this until it's too late. You finally get the freedom you've been chasing, the job that lets you work from anywhere, the break from your relationship, the space to choose your own path. And instead of feeling alive, you feel anxious, disoriented, or numb. That's because, as Viktor Frankl warned, freedom without purpose becomes chaos. It feels like power at first, until you realize it's weightless. It doesn't ground you, it doesn't hold you, it just drifts. And modern life is built around this illusion. The more choices you have, the better off you are. The more you can do what you want, the more successful or evolved you must be. But here's the hidden reality no one talks about. The more options you have without knowing what actually matters to you, the more likely you are to do nothing. To scroll, to drift, to procrastinate, and to call it freedom. This is what psychologists now call the paradox of choice. When there are too many doors and no clear why behind walking through any of them, we become frozen. It's not liberation, it's paralysis. Frankl saw this firsthand. After the Holocaust, as society tried to rebuild, he noticed a deep spiritual vacuum in modern people. On the surface, they had more opportunity than ever, but internally, they were drifting, they were empty, and they were suffering. He wrote, "Freedom is in danger of degenerating into mere arbitrariness unless it is lived in terms of responsibleness." In other words, freedom isn't the goal. Freedom is the space in which we choose meaning. Without meaning, it becomes torture. Let's make this real. Imagine standing in the middle of a vast empty field. You can walk in any direction. No fences, no maps, no signs, no goals. At first it feels exhilarating, pure potential. You can go anywhere. But after a while, the excitement fades. You start second-guessing your steps. You wonder if you should have gone left instead of right. You walk in circles. You feel isolated, you feel uncertain, you feel afraid. This is what modern life feels like for so many people. Unlimited freedom, but no orientation, no deeper axis, no North Star. And so what do we do to cope? We distract ourselves. We chase dopamine. We convince ourselves that more options will fix the feeling of emptiness caused by too many options. We download another app. We switch jobs again. We stay single longer. We move cities. We try to find meaning in movement. But without direction, motion is just noise. Here's where it gets even darker. In a world that worships autonomy, the moment you pause and admit that freedom is making you miserable, you feel ashamed. Like you're broken for not enjoying the buffet of choices in front of you, but Frankl would say you're not broken, you're just human. Humans don't thrive in freedom alone, we thrive in freedom in service of meaning. A canvas is only beautiful because it has edges. A melody only exists because of constraints. Rhythm, tempo, key. You're not weak for feeling lost when everything is open. You're not lazy for not choosing when there's nothing real to choose for. You're just experiencing the truth that most of modern society is too scared to admit. Directionless freedom isn't empowerment, it's abandonment. So if freedom isn't the goal, what is? Frankl believed it's not about maximizing your options, It's about finding something worth committing to, something bigger than yourself, something that makes you gladly give up all the other options, because now you know what matters. And once you do that, freedom becomes real. It's no longer the pressure to keep your options open. It's the power to live fully into the one option that's aligned with your purpose. But before we go there, we need to ask the question that sits beneath it all. If freedom without meaning becomes suffering, then what is meaning actually made of? Let's look at what Frankl discovered in the darkest place imaginable, and why that truth still applies to us today. The world tells you, first get free, then you'll find meaning. Frankl flips that completely. He says, only through meaning does freedom become real. And he learned this not in a classroom, but in a concentration camp. When Frankl was imprisoned in Auschwitz, all his freedoms were stripped away. No choices, no rights, no dignity. He was reduced, like every other prisoner, to a number, tattooed on his arm. But here's the paradox. Even in the total absence of freedom, he discovered that a person could still live with purpose, still make choices, still find meaning. And that meaning, not freedom, is what gave people the strength to survive. Frankl noticed something strange in the camps. Some people gave up quickly. They lost the will to live, even when their bodies were still intact. Others, even when sick or starving, somehow stayed emotionally intact. They endured. They helped others. They didn't break. The difference wasn't physical, it was existential. He wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." That one sentence holds the entire essence of his philosophy. You can be completely unfree and still choose meaning. And on the flip side, you can have every freedom the modern world can offer and still feel totally lost. That's where most people are today. We have more access to freedom than any generation in history. Financial freedom, career freedom, sexual freedom, informational freedom, freedom of lifestyle, identity, expression, and yet depression, anxiety, and suicide are at record highs. That's not a coincidence. It's a signal, because freedom without meaning is a void. It offers you infinite directions, but no reason to walk. Frankl believed that what humans crave most isn't freedom, it's a reason to be free. In his landmark book, Man's Search for Meaning, he tells the story of prisoners who had something, or someone, to live for. A daughter waiting for them, a manuscript they still wanted to finish, a belief that their suffering had purpose. These people suffered just like the rest, but their pain had context. And that made all the difference. Because when pain has a why, it stops being senseless. It becomes transformational. Frankl's patients after the war often came to him with existential despair. They'd say things like, "What's the point of anything? Life feels meaningless." He never gave them simple affirmations. He didn't tell them to pursue happiness or chase freedom. He asked one question: what is the demand life is making of you right now? Not, what do you want? But, what is life asking of you? That's a radically different orientation. It turns life from a playground of options into a sacred responsibility. It takes you out of your ego and plugs you into something deeper. A role to play, a task to fulfill, a purpose to embody. Because here's the truth no one wants to hear. Happiness is a side effect of meaning, not the other way around. Freedom is a tool of meaning, not the destination. We've reversed the hierarchy, and we're suffering because of it. You were never meant to build your life around the avoidance of limits. You were meant to build it around something that deserves your limits, something that shapes your choices into a coherent, soul-aligned direction. That's the deeper freedom Frankl offers. Not the freedom of choosing anything, but the freedom of choosing something that gives your pain, your time, your suffering, value. So if you've been chasing freedom and still feel empty, maybe it's not that you're doing life wrong. Maybe you're just using the wrong blueprint. You don't need more choices. You need something worth choosing for. And that's where we go next. Into the one thing that sounds like the opposite of freedom, but might actually be the thing your soul has been craving all along: responsibility. If freedom without meaning leads to suffering, and meaning is what gives freedom direction, then the next question becomes, how do you build a life of meaning? Frankl's answer was simple and deeply countercultural: responsibility. Not in the superficial sense, paying bills or answering emails, but in the existential sense, the kind of responsibility that connects your life to something bigger than yourself. It sounds almost offensive to modern ears. Responsibility? Isn't that what we're all trying to escape? Isn't that the weight we carry from jobs, expectations, broken families, trauma, and burnout? But Frankl saw something different. He believed that responsibility isn't the weight, it's the anchor. It's the only thing strong enough to hold you steady when everything else collapses. Because when you feel empty, directionless, or numb, it's usually not because you're doing too much. It's because you're not doing what matters. And meaning always requires responsibility. You don't feel your purpose by meditating on it. You carry it. You act on it. You choose it again and again, even when it hurts. This is why Frankl famously said, "What man actually needs is not a tensionless state, but rather the striving and struggling for a worthwhile goal." And that's the exact opposite of what modern culture tells you. We're sold a vision of life where the highest aim is comfort, optimization, ease. If you're overwhelmed, you should cut things out, quit, unplug, let go. The ultimate life, we're told, is one of zero pressure, zero responsibility, and maximum autonomy. But Frankl knew the truth. Meaning is born in friction, in service, in sacrifice, and without that, we decay. Look around. Our society is overflowing with people who are technically free, but emotionally untethered. We've abandoned the idea of committing to something larger than ourselves, and we wonder why so many people feel hollow inside. You don't find meaning by removing burdens, you find meaning by shouldering the right ones. This is why Frankl once proposed that the United States not only have a Statue of Liberty on the East Coast, but a Statue of Responsibility on the West Coast, to balance it. Because freedom without responsibility collapses into chaos. So here's the real challenge. What responsibility are you avoiding right now that might secretly hold the key to your purpose? Maybe it's the responsibility to heal, not just for yourself, but so you don't pass down your pain. Maybe it's the responsibility to speak, because your silence is costing people more than your fear is costing you. Maybe it's the responsibility to commit to something or someone, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. We run from responsibility because we think it limits us. But what it actually does is define us. It turns random experience into narrative. It turns chaos into coherence. It gives your suffering context. And without that, even pleasure feels empty. This is the hidden cost of freedom without responsibility. You can do anything, but nothing matters. That's why so many people feel unmotivated, even when their schedules are wide open. It's not that they're lazy, it's that there's nothing pulling them forward that feels worth the effort. Responsibility is what turns effort into devotion. It's not the thing that kills your freedom, it's the thing that turns your freedom into something meaningful. So if you've been asking, why do I feel so lost when I finally got what I wanted? Maybe it's because the one thing missing isn't more freedom. It's something to give your freedom to. But even when you know that, there's still a final question. How do you find that meaning? What does it look like to actually live it out, especially when life is messy, painful, or uncertain? That's where Frankl's 3 timeless paths to meaning come in, and they're far more practical than you might think. Let's break them down. By now you understand the core of Frankl's philosophy. Freedom without meaning becomes emptiness. Meaning requires responsibility, and responsibility connects us to something larger than the self. But even if you accept all of that, you're still left with the hardest question of all. How do I actually find meaning? Not just in theory, but in your life, right now, with all its uncertainty, pain, and complexity. Frankl gave us a map, a simple but profound framework. He called them the 3 main paths to meaning, and they apply to every human being, regardless of circumstance. 1. By creating a work or accomplishing a deed. This is the path of contribution. You create something, you do something. You build, write, care, teach, innovate, design, serve. It's not about the ego, it's about impact. Your effort becomes meaningful when it leaves a mark on the world, and it doesn't have to be grand. Frankl made this clear. What matters is not status, it's sincerity. You can find just as much meaning cleaning a hospital floor with love and presence as you can writing a best-selling novel. The key is devotion, giving your energy to something that improves life, even in a small way. If you feel lost right now, ask, what am I uniquely positioned to contribute? What skills do I have? What pain have I survived? What questions won't leave me alone? That's where your first path might be. 2. By experiencing something or encountering someone. This is the path of love, not in the abstract, but in the fully embodied presence with something or someone outside of yourself. You experience beauty. You witness art. You fall in love, you stay, you serve, you see someone completely and allow yourself to be seen. Frankl said the highest experience of meaning often comes not from achievement, but from relationship, where the meaning is not earned, but received. He saw this even in Auschwitz, moments where prisoners shared their last pieces of bread, where someone helped carry another's body, even when they could barely walk themselves. In a world obsessed with self-optimization, this path feels radical. You don't always need to be productive. Sometimes the most meaningful thing is to love well. If you feel numb or disconnected, ask, who or what am I being called to fully see, without trying to fix or control it? 3. By the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering. This is the hardest path, but also the most transformational. Frankl called it the tragic optimism of life, that even suffering, when met with the right attitude, can become meaningful. Not all pain is redemptive. Some pain is just cruel. But Frankl believed that no suffering is wasted if we choose to give it meaning. That doesn't mean sugarcoating it. It means standing face to face with it and saying, you don't get to break me for nothing. I will make something out of this. This is what Frankl saw again and again. People surviving the unimaginable, not through strength or willpower alone, but through a why that made their how bearable. So if you're in pain right now, ask, what might this suffering be calling forth in me? What wisdom, what tenderness, what fire is being born through this? Sometimes your meaning isn't found after the pain. It's found in it. Frankl's 3 paths aren't philosophies to study. They're invitations to live. And no matter where you are, broken, burned out, beginning again, one of them is always available. You can create, you can love, you can endure. And in doing so, you stop drifting through endless options and begin aligning with something real. Not because it's easy, not because it's guaranteed, but because your soul knows when something is worth carrying. That's the shift Frankl wanted for all of us. Not a life of comfort, but a life of depth. Not freedom for its own sake, but freedom used to serve something greater. Because when you have meaning, the suffering doesn't stop, but now it's worth it. So here's the truth no one tells you. You were never supposed to chase freedom for its own sake. Freedom isn't the end goal. It's the space to choose something worth suffering for. We've been sold a lie that fulfillment comes from avoiding limits, maximizing options, and doing whatever we want. But all that gives us is a life without weight, a life that feels good in theory, but hollow in practice. Viktor Frankl lived through the worst that humanity had to offer, and still came out with one of the most hopeful messages of the 20th century, that you can lose everything and still choose meaning, that your freedom doesn't disappear when life gets hard. It starts when you decide who you'll be in the face of it. This is what we've forgotten. We think we're lost because we haven't found the right freedom, but maybe we're lost because we haven't chosen the right responsibility. Maybe your life isn't supposed to be a blank canvas of endless choices. Maybe it's supposed to be a devotion, a response to the unique call that only you can hear. And that call might not come with clarity. It might not feel easy or safe, but you'll know it by the way it stirs your heart, by the way it makes your pain mean something. So don't ask, what do I want from life? Ask, what is life asking of me? That's where freedom becomes real. Not the freedom to escape meaning, but the freedom to embody it. If this hits something deep in you, if you've been chasing all the right things and still feel empty, the next video will go even deeper. Why you feel empty after success? Carl Jung explained it. Because it's one thing to realize freedom isn't enough. It's another thing to achieve everything you wanted and still feel like something's missing. That video unpacks the exact moment your shadow shows up, and why real fulfillment isn't in what you win, but in what you integrate. Watch it next. Your story isn't over, it's just starting to make sense.